Hey, Bradley Zordreger here, back for another episode of Overkill Reviews after taking like the whole summer off. I was just kind of having a weird time with my relationship with music, and especially my time with covering music professionally. Took some time off, got re-energized, got really re-energized through brutal death metal. It's been a while since I've said this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Please subscribe. Please check us out on Patreon if you can afford to. It's awesome. So for this week, and there's a motorcycle outside of my window. Don't live on a busy street in a big city. Sucks. This week, it's probably the only time ever that I'll say that this album that I'm reviewing is from a band whose last release was a country's cover album. Yep, it's the new album by DEVILDRIVER called Dealing with Demons 1, out today on Napalm Records. DEVILDRIVER were formed at the tail end of Dez Fafara's old band, Coal Chamber. Fun story about Dez, his real name is Bradley. Great name. That's Coal Chamber. This is DEVILDRIVER. Like I said, this was towards the tail end of that band, but this band leans more on the groove metal side of things, whereas Coal Chamber were more on the nu metal side of things. Well, sort of. The first DEVILDRIVER album, the self-titled one, kind of fell pretty close to the kind of thing. But, you know, on the next album, they got guitarist Mike Spreitzer, who's been with them ever since, and he kind of made it a lot more like, not jump the fuck up, but riff the fuck out, you know what I'm saying? Like a little bit more melodic death metal elements. Like I said, the last album, an Outlaw Countries cover album, and now we've got the first of two albums. The first of a double LP series thing. I don't know. Let's go. Ooh. So I have a weird relationship with double LPs, where I often find that, you know, there's a lot of filler. So let's see if that's the case on part one of Dealing with Demons. Dealing with devils? Dealing with somebody. Who am I dealing with? Dez. Dealing with demons. Cool. Let's get it. So as I mentioned earlier, groove has always been like paramount to the DEVILDRIVER sound. And while it's shifted from new to more traditional groove metal, this time around they've kind of opened their sound to more modern interpretations of what groove can mean. The opening track, Keep Away From Me, has some like serious Gojira vibes, which is something I'd never expect from these guys, and is quite frankly pretty freaking cool. Vengeance Is Clear, which is the second track on the album, starts out with like that Meshuggah kind of syncopation feel before like the breakdown that comes in later almost has like a modern Decapitated kind of vibe. These are interesting takes on what groove metal can mean without falling exclusively into the realm of what groove metal is as the box, you know, that we like Pantera and Lamb of God kind of thing. This, you know, taking influences from more modern genres and bringing them into your sound kind of reminds me of another band which Dez's previous band, Coal Chamber, came up with. In fact, Dez's previous band, Coal Chamber, actually played over this band in the early days of touring, and that band is Slipknot. I recently actually wrote an article for Hard Noise about growing to love Slipknot. I used to be a hater, and then I grew to love them and really appreciate them and the influence that they have. And in that article, I talk about how they kind of bring in elements of more modern contemporary popular genres in heavy music, but they do it in a way where it really works and re-energizes their sound. So this is a worthwhile injection into DEVILDRIVER's sound for sure. These, you know, interesting ways to groove it out. That being said, some of my favorite moments on this album are actually not super focused on the groove. They're more focused on like the atmosphere. There's a song Wishing, which really did not appeal to me at first. It's more on like a grungy kind of rock kind of thing, like Dez is singing, you know, the dreaded clean vocals. The singing, it didn't appeal to me at first. The song didn't appeal to me at first, but it creeps into your mind and it haunts you and it stays in there. And then like the triumphant chorus riff is understated yet takes over, and it like really contrasts everything like well. It's like a push and pull with like the creepy verse. And then we've got the song You Give Me a Reason to Drink, which hilariously enough it features guest vocalists from Dez's kid, Simon. And the reason that's funny, what I'm saying is, you know, like, you give me a reason to drink. How many parents have thought that about their kids? My parents probably did about me. Anyway, the song once again focuses more on like the atmospheric side of things, with like the main verse riff being simultaneously off-putting and catchy, but off-putting. And speaking of off-putting, they kind of go full in on that off-putting vibe with like this like old school chaotic metallic hardcore, and it's sick. I just wish that it got expanded out into more than just like a pre-chorus tease, because it could be a cool ass breakdown. Anyway, on to the stuff that I'm not as fond of with this. Unfortunately, the atmosphere focus sometimes drags down songs where there are interesting parts, but the overall energy is just siphoned down because of them. So like The Damned Don't Cry, for example, opens up with this really cool riff. I really like how the drums are playing around and with the guitars. And then later on, the breakdown has this like erratic start and stop thing that you never really know what's going to happen. It's almost like I guess like kind of like those like genty metalcore bands, you know, like your Veil of Maya or your Born of Osiris, where it's kind of like, whoa, what's gonna happen next? But ask me to tell you what happened around those parts, and I would find it difficult to do so. Speaking of metalcore, there's a song on here called Witches, and the opening has more of like that modern metalcore feel without the gent and the progressive, but definitely not the old school metallic hardcore. And the opening kind of reminds me of Bury Tomorrow, and I really like that band, but it's kind of not what I'm looking for here. And there's also some like, I don't know, like kind of like half-assed Sweet Death riffs there that are, you know, generally part and parcel with a lot of metalcore. And again, doesn't really fully do it for me. However, I do prefer that Sweet Death riffing to like some of like the cheesier, almost like traditional heavy metal, triumphant kind of thing that happens in Nest of Vipers that really drives it along. There's like this melody that's kind of the focus over the groove. More melody than groove here. It's the kind of corny stuff that makes modern day Arch Enemy like essentially unlistenable to me, unfortunately. Anyway, let me kind of tie all of my feelings on the negative side here together, because this kind of explains, you know, a lot of these shortcomings. Part of the reason that I think Slipknot has been able to, you know, pick and pull influences from around them, from the peers coming up and the bands that are doing something fresh and new, and make their sound even more new and fresh, is because they have such a distinct sound and distinct identity that when they put these elements in here, it still feels distinctly Slipknot. It just feels apropos of the times. Whereas like Devil Driver don't have that same it factor. I mean, if they were to have one, it would definitely be Dez's voice, but it's not as immediately stick out and jump out recognizable as Corey Taylor and some of the recognizable elements of Slipknot. I'm not just talking about the, you know, kegs. As an example of the extraneous influences not necessarily maintaining enough of Devil Driver's identity, we've got the song Scars Me Forever, which has this riff that reminds me very much of a tapping part in Ouroboros by Gojira. Not in like the same ways that the opening song on this Devil Driver album, where it's just like in spirit, but more in like it feels almost like a lift. But in general, that song kind of grooves along exactly as you would expect a groove metal song to groove along. And ditto for the songs Iona and the slightly slower title track. They are groove metal as groove metal does. Fuck, man. Holy shit. Alright, so, in case you forgot, I gave you my positives, I gave you my negatives, I gave a summation of my negatives to kind of put them all in perspectives, and now I'm going to sum up all of that in my conclusion. So some of those songs I just talked about, and in general, the songs that I was talking about more in the negative side of things, kind of close out this album and really take over the runtime. It definitely leans more on slower stuff than it does faster or more crushing grooves. And it really does, unfortunately, drag down the energy over its entire runtime. And that might be resultant of the fact that this is a double LP. As I said in the intro, are more often than not padded out with some filler. I bet you if you took the best songs from this, the best songs from part 2, which will, I'm sure, eventually come out, you get a really killer album. As it is, it works to an extent. DevilDriver as a whole are a band who, like, really surprised me. I have, like, this notion in my head of what they are. And, you know, part of that is probably built on the fact that Dez used to play in a nu metal band, in Cold Chamber. But almost every time I hear them, I'm pleasantly surprised. There are enough standout moments, and as much as, like, I don't love some of the elements, I think that, you know, overall, it's a solid release that hopefully will make more sense in the context of part 2. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 skulls on Overkill Reviews. And now, Shoutout time. So first off, we've got the new album by Anaal Nathrakh entitled Endarkenment. It's out on Metal Blade Records today. The album artwork for this is a pig with dicks coming out of his eyes. It's a play on or reference to the song Libidinous, a pig with cocks in its eyes, which is like hard as fuck. And this is beautiful. This is art. I reviewed their last album, and I loved it. The operatic vocals, they've always been there, but they're just like on another level now. Next up, we've got the band 18 Visions and their Inferno EP, which they put out themselves independently today. This band is like, their influence cannot be overstated. You know, they're like proto-deathcore, and then they, you know, went metalcore, like chaotic metalcore, and were influential there. They started adding singing to that kind of stuff, and even went full on like rock before like a band like Avenged Sevenfold did. And, you know, they're back doing like that heavy chaotic metallic hardcore here, and it's awesome. Next up, we've got Enslaved and their album Utgard on Nuclear Blast. You know what Enslaved does. They used to be black metal. Now they do whatever the fuck they want. You know, it's more of the same, like, mind-boggling stuff they always do. Got 2 more for you. We've got 6 Feet Under and their album Nightmares of the Decomposed, out today on Metal Blade. Some of the vocals in that track, Zodiac, are hilarious. I will check it out. Yeah, you probably should too, out of morbid curiosity. But that song One Bullet Left with Ice-T on it, hard as fuck. And last but not least, we have Corey Taylor and his album CMFT, which stands for Corey Motherfucking Taylor if you're bad at acronyms, out today, Roadrunner Records. Corey's been incredibly gracious to myself and the Banger team as a whole. When I reviewed their last Slipknot album, Corey and I got to talking online a little bit. He was incredibly respectful of my opinions, invited us out to this show, and then we kicked it with him a little bit after the show. Incredibly gracious guys. And he actually approved of that article I wrote of, you know, growing to love Slipknot. So if it's got Corey Taylor's seal of approval, you should definitely go read it. I'll tell one of the Banger people to put the link in the description below, and also hit the comments down below, and let's talk about DevilDriver. Let's talk about my Slipknot article. Let's talk about the bands that I gave shoutouts about. Two. Maybe I'll comment back. I'm super busy with school, so no promises, but I'll try. You know me. I'm at Brad Seed on Instagram. You can hit me up there. We can talk there. Peace.